think about it. If you handed me, Ford, I got a gift for you. Here's $1 million. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm actually taking something away from you. So when you tell someone that's apologizing to you, don't worry about it, that's an unfair thing to do because they wouldn't be apologizing. They wouldn't be doing the 6 steps unless they thought they needed to.
This is the Ford Taylor Talks podcast, where leadership stops being information and starts becoming transformation. Real tools, real change in your relationships, your team, and your life. Let's get into it. Ford, we got a lot of tools that we model, we discuss, we adjust and adapt, trying to get better at them every day. The 6-step apology, I don't want to say is a tool that gets shortcut the most, but why do people have such a challenge with starting at 1, going to 6, and really taking this start to finish so it maximizes the impact of the tool?
Well, PW, part of that's probably the way we've been taught and raised on how to apologize. Things like apologize, even if you didn't do something, just to make everything, smooth everything over. A lot of apologies, they'll say, if I did something, or we'll apologize for how we made someone feel, which is basically saying we control your feeling. In other words, we have control over how you respond to something that I did. And so there's all kinds of things that we've been taught, most of us growing up. And even within an apology, most of the time it's 2 to 3 steps. And when you go through all 6 steps, you are basically making a commitment to change. And if you look at the true definition of the word apology or repentance, it means that you've done it about face. You're changing your behavior. And so to go through all 6 steps, you're actually saying, I mean this, and I'm not going to keep behaving this way anymore. And that takes some humility. And so lots of times it could be pride that keeps us from being able to do them all. But I think most of it's the way that we've been trained. It's the way that's in our brain. And as you know, we talk about if you want to change our behavior, our actions, we have to change our thoughts. And one of the ways of changing the thoughts is the 6-step apology.
For the first step is to state the offense. The second step is to admit you were wrong. What about to the folks that say, hey, that's pretty good. That's more than I ever did before.
Yeah. Well, good for you. That's a good start. And so start. But again, most people, I don't want to say most, probably most, but a lot of people start with if I did something. If I hurt you, if I did this, and that completely discounts an apology. But when you just go in and just say it, I did this, PW, when I poured that hot coffee on you on the podcast, that was disrespectful, and just say it, whatever it is. And in those words, I was wrong, that's just hard for a lot of people. But when you start off with those 2 steps, there's no ifs, there's no explanations, I just did it. And it just takes an apology to a whole nother level. And that really opens the door for the 3rd step to be heard. And it's very simple. I'm sorry. And of course, we teach people that if you were raised in a home or sports coach or siblings, whatever, that, you were raised thinking you're a sorry little son of a gun from some of those people, you can change the word to I apologize. But it's very, very clear. Don't use words like I want to apologize, because that's not actually an apology. But when you put those first 2 steps in, you've opened the door for the receiver to really believe that, maybe this is different. Especially if you're a person who's apologized for the same behavior a number of times. A lot of people will do an apology just to get out of a conversation. But when you do those first 2, you open the door for maybe they believe you when you say, I'm sorry. And then when you ask that next question, number 4, will you or when you can forgive me, that really kind of sets people on their heels in a good way. Because often people have been taught to ask for forgiveness, but they only ask, again, to get out of the conversation. They don't really have any intention of changing their behavior. They're not really taking responsibility, which makes that 5th step so important, which is I give you permission to hold me accountable not to do this to you or anyone else ever again. And again, when we teach that particular step, we have to be careful that we aren't putting the responsibility on the other person to hold us accountable, that we're really giving them permission. And when we get through those 5 steps and we mean it and it's from the heart and it's sincere, most of the time the receiver of the apology is like, whoa, that was different. I think they mean it. And that 6th step, I mean, it's a game changer. Because when you walk in the posture of humility, and that's hard for all of us, I mean, we're all people, and to stay in that posture, when you ask that 6th step, is there anything else I owe you an apology for, or anything else about this that you want to talk about? You've now opened the door for that person to really step in and say, man, if you mean that, let's take our relationship to a whole new level. And I've just watched so many marriages just get to a whole different place when they were willing to each humble themselves and make changes based on what the other ones wanted. I've watched bosses with employees. I was with a young man yesterday at a birthday party, and he was asking me for some questions about raising his son. And I'd share some things with him about, don't be so hard on him, because he was telling me what he was doing. And I said, be quick to apologize when you make a mistake with your children. Most parents won't do that. I think they're kind of taught that you're in charge, you're the parent. But if you do make a mistake with your child and you use this kind of apology, I can tell you the tears flow. The kids want to be close to their parents when that happens. Spouses want to be close to each other when they truly believe that we both want to change to make our relationship better. So that 6-step apology, you've heard so many stories of the people that have been impacted that have come back and told the stories. But yeah, I think the big answer is we just have not been taught to do it in a way that really, really makes a difference and shows that we really want to change our behavior.
Ford, coach our viewers through a lot of times when I'm starting down this 6-step trail, and especially with people that know me, like they never let me get past 1 or 2. They always, I'm not going to say blow it off, but they say, oh no, it's okay. What, coach me through, or coach our viewers through how to make sure we get to the bottom so it really sticks and continues to build that relationship.
Yeah, PW, that's a great point. I think what happens is people are just uncomfortable with that deep of a relationship. They're uncomfortable with humility. They don't know how to deal with it. We just don't see it very often. And therefore, they'll stop you and say, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it. Well, think about it. If you handed me, Ford, I got a gift for you. Here's $1 million. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm actually taking something away from you. So when you tell someone that's apologizing to you, don't worry about it, that's an unfair thing to do, because they wouldn't be apologizing. They wouldn't be doing the 6 steps unless they thought they needed to. And so I would encourage, if someone does that to you, that you just say, hey, if this isn't for you, would you let me do this for me? I mean, if you don't need this, that's okay. This is important for me to do. So that would be one response. If you're on the other end of that, I would encourage you to stop doing that. And if someone does ask you for forgiveness, just quickly say, I forgive you, because forgiveness is a choice. And now everybody gets what they need out of it. But I would not cut people off if I were on the receiving end. Now, if you truly didn't think they needed to apologize, okay, in your heart, you might, let's say I did this with you and you didn't really think I needed to, you might call me later that day or the next day and just say something like, man, I love you, thank you for that apology. Our relationship is good. You didn't need to do that, but you have no idea how much I appreciate it. So there is a way of you being able to make your point that that's okay, but don't just slough it off as a that's okay. You can actually take that that's okay and take the relationship to a whole nother level. So how would I coach people? If you really don't think they need to do it, wait. Let them finish their apology. Go back later and say that, and even use that time as a further relationship building opportunity.
Or do you have a story in your business career? And I know you have a lot of stories, but specifically where a 6-step really had a major change in a relationship in your business life?
Man, there's just so many. Golly, I mean, we've seen CEOs, business leaders who lost good people, where they've left the organization and then call them and realize the leader, this was my fault, I'm responsible, where they call and apologize. And the person will call back and say, can I come back to work? They'll want to come back and be in the organization because their leader has shown humility. And so those kinds of stories that kind of story is all over. To watch a CEO of a company who made a mistake to stand up before their whole organization. I remember in our own organization one time I made a huge mistake. And I literally thought, I may cry telling this story, I literally thought they would all leave when I told them, and I said, I owe you all an apology. And I did it. And it was something that was very shameful for me. It was a hard thing to do. And I thought literally everybody was going to hang up on me. And when I finished, there was no response. And I'm thinking, okay, good. Everybody got disconnected. Nobody heard all that. That was the first things I thought. And all of a sudden, I started hearing some sniffles. And everybody was still there. But I don't know, 10 or 15 seconds went by, and one of them said, is there any other place in the world that you would want to be right now than with this team? But most people don't realize that that's the kind of leadership that people want. They want to follow people that are human, they're normal. And a 6-step apology is one of the ways that you can say, hey, I make mistakes just like you do. We all make mistakes. So yeah, there's so many. So many of the bigger stories for me are around marriage, watching marriages restored. Because, in companies, as you know, organizations, we teach when people are happy at home, they're far more productive at work. And when they're productive at work, they're far more happy at home. And so it works. This 6-step works across so many different areas, and it impacts all the quadrants in which we live, work, or play.
So when we do a live event, the first day is, some say it's like a gnat drinking out of a fire hose. I know on the Ford Taylor Talks website and some of the blog posts, there's some articles written about the 6-step apology. But we like to give homework. And one piece of homework that we give after day one is to write down a name or 2 or 3 of folks and practice the 6-step apology.
Yeah, and we tell people, when you're first learning it, you might even role play it with somebody or role play it in a mirror. In other words, you don't want to be robotic. If you don't mean it, please don't do it. Just please don't take it as a ploy or a tool. Use it as something that really builds relationships. And one more quick word of warning, that if you are going to use it and you ask that 6th step, is there anything else? Be sure that you're in a posture, especially a marriage, but be sure you're in a posture that you can handle whatever comes back. Because if someone gives you something else and then you defend it, you probably just undid the first one. But yeah, we've just seen so many people get up out of rooms literally crying when we teach this sometimes. Go out and do it and then come back in the room and go, one story. My daughter, for the first time, 15 years, we're having dinner tonight. We've had people come back on day 2 and say, I tried it. Now, we do tell people don't practice this when everybody's stressed. Don't go home when everybody's cooking and kids are running around and crazy. This isn't the time to practice it. I know you got a book coming out. Don't practice on a paying customer.
Never practice on a paying
Never practice on a paying customer. Well, this same thing. Never practice when somebody's completely stressed.
Yeah.
That is not the time
Yeah.
that they want to hear your apology. But to hear, one story when a man he said he had nothing left. The next day he comes back and said, I went home last night and I tried the 6-step apology because my story was the same as Ford. He had cheated on his wife. And he said, I had nothing to lose. So I called her and did it, and she hung up on me. And he said she called me back 20 minutes later and said, would you do that again? And he did it again, and she hung up on him again. And then he said, she called me back about an hour later and asked me, did you really mean that? And he said, and he told her yes. And she was literally filing for divorce the next day. And she said, if you really meant it, get your bags and come back home. We can't restore our marriage if I file for divorce. So the stories are just so many stories.
So I wrote down 3 things. Write the 6 steps down.
Yes.
Practice or role play.
With a mirror or with someone else. Right.
And really the third one is think it through, be authentic, mean it, and don't deliver a six step in the middle of a stressful situation.
Just don't do it because it's probably not going to go well. It may be one of those now. I've been waiting 10 years for you to do this, and you pick now to do it. So so I wouldn't do that.
Ford, this is just one tool, the six step apology. You're going back on the road. You've never been retired, but your business has really shifted. And but man, I mean, 10 cities. You're going to be out there all around the United States, starting in Tampa, Florida, August 13th and 14th. If you've never been to a 2-day TL, this is just one tool. We talked about it before we rolled this episode. I said, man, we got 50 plus tools. And then we started thinking there's over 100 tools, but we want to put some tools in your toolbox to really improve your relationships, impact lives. And man, when you're better at home, you're so much better at work. The tools work.
Yeah, and we're thankful, that people have heard me, I say this a lot. Aren't y'all glad I made so many mistakes in my life to be able to learn this stuff, to be able to teach others? But so much of the stuff that we teach, I did apply at work and I didn't apply at home. And it was successful at work. When I started applying it at home, guess what? It was even more successful there than it was at work. So you're 100% right on that.
So that's all for today. Practice the six-step apology before you deliver it. Ford, take us out of here, brother.
So PW, thanks for everything. Thanks for always being here. I just don't think I'd do this without you. And thank you all for being with us today. Remember, we're making leaders who make leaders who make leaders. We want to make leadership operational, practical, implementable, that it can be used in every area in which we live, work, or play. And don't forget, love, influence, transform.